Hi. If you're a Muslim and you are a woman, you may have been taught to believe that in order for you to be a good Muslim woman, or for you to be considered Muslim at all, you needed to cover yourself. And you may felt confused because everyone told you something different. Some told you to cover your face, your full body, your head, while others said, no, you just have to cover your head and your body. Some said you can cover your body only without covering your face nor your head. And you felt confused and you wondered if it is coming from one book. Then why is it that there are so many different views and messages regarding the Muslim woman and how she should cover? There's this concept in philosophy called epistemology, and it is the notion that discusses or that studies the ways in which we humans attain knowledge, the different research methods, the mathematical equations that we use to determine if something is a truth, if something is a universal truth. How do we know that the earth rotates around the sun? And how do we know that we really exist and that we're not just dreaming and that this whole life isn't just one big dream? But there are some things in life that, just like we know that the sun is fixed and it doesn't, and that the earth rotates around the sun, we know that to be a truth. But there are also some things that we know to be truths, but we don't have evidence for. We don't have research that determines or that shows such truths. Things like the existence of God. Many have argued and said, no, there's no real evidence, there's no mathematical equation that shows it, so it's just considered a belief and we can't consider it a truth. However, many philosophers have said no. Since the concept of God keeps coming to the minds of humankind and in every era, then the existence of God must be a truth. And so for individuals who believe that the existence of God is a truth, they also believe in divine revelation, they believe in scripture and religious books. And some individuals study these books for years and years and years to understand the messages these books contain. And these individuals are called theologians and scholars. However, within the circle of these theologians and scholars, there's so much ambiguity going on. There's so much, this verse refers to this. No, this verse refers to that. And so they end up fighting and they're arguing about what the verse is referring to. And so why is it that a single verse, which is composed of 6 words, why is it that it has so many different meanings or interpretations? There's this concept in psychology called hermeneutics. And hermeneutics is the notion that states that the way we are from inside, what we are conscious of, our subconscious mind, our personal biases, our educational background, the level of our intellect and our knowledge, and our personal preferences and our biases, all of these things impact or influence the way we read a verse. So we're not looking only at the verse for what it purely is, but we are also adding to the verse our own personal assumptions, personal biases, educational background, the conditioning that we grew up with. And so the verse is not only what the verse is, but it's also a reflection of what we are. And so this is wrong. When we look at verses, we need to put aside ourself. We need to put aside our psyche. And we need to look at the verse through the eyes of logic. We need to look at the verse purely for what the verse really is, so that we can extract truths and meanings out of the verses. There is a philosopher and a theologian by the name of William Ockham. Now, William Ockham likewise believed that everything that comes from divine revelation, or everything that comes from scripture or comes from the heavens, needs to be something that helps us walk into the light. It's something that helps elevate the quality of our lives, helps us become better individuals because it's coming from the heavens. But he believed that if the belief or the idea is not doing that, it's putting us in confusion, it's making us stressed out, and it's confusing us a lot, then these beliefs can't be from the heavens. And he believed that they must be coming from man's assumption or interpretation. He believed that we humans can fall into error, and as much as we study and as intellectual as we may be, we can still make mistakes. And so we can consider something to be a truth, but it's really just our own personal opinion or assumption. And so he came up with this deductive method where he said, if the belief or the idea is not full of light and simplicity and it's not logical, and it's not helping us become better individuals, then it must not be from the heavens, and so it has to be canceled out. And he kept doing that until he reached the belief that was logical and easy to absorb, and that would be considered a truth, and that would be considered from the divine scripture. And later his method became known as Occam's razor. Like unwanted hair we shave off, unwanted and false beliefs also have to be shaved off as well, and they have to be canceled out. They can't be considered the truth with a capital T. So when we look into the Muslim covering in Islam and we apply Occam's razor, we find that there are so many different views. So many people are saying it's this way, others are saying no, it's that way, and they're holding on to their belief and they're fighting each other, and everyone thinks they figured out the truth. Well, according to William, if the belief is full of contradictions and complications, then it could be likely that it's coming from a man's assumption or interpretation. And so when we look at how a woman has to cover, and some say that she has to cover her face and her head, we find that other scholars say no, she just has to cover her head and her body. So in that, there is a contradiction. So we can't really consider it the truth, because the book itself doesn't clearly state it that way. And so because it doesn't clearly state it like that, in those terms, we can't say that if a woman doesn't do it that way, then she's sinning or she's wrong. Because of the fact that it's not indicated that way, it means that it's open for interpretation. It's open for discussion. And so it means that she can look at it and determine for herself what she wishes to do, what makes sense to her based on her conclusion. And so that's why it's very wrong for us to listen to scholars who say a woman has to cover her face, and if she doesn't cover her face, she's going to hell. Or if a woman doesn't cover her head, she's going to hell. This is not true, because there isn't a clear verse that states it that way. And so if a woman doesn't do that, it is not right. It's wrong for us to tell her that she's wrong, or to tell her she's going to hell. Because where is your evidence? This is just based on interpretation. It's based on most likely the verse means that. Perhaps the verse means that. And that is very different than saying the verse means that. It's very different than saying that is the ultimate truth. It's very different. And so it's not this way or the highway. And so we need to allow people to look at the verses for themselves and determine what the verses mean to them, and allow them that privilege. Because if God wanted it to be one way, then it would have been clearly stated, do that and do this. Just like as simple as that. But because it's very vague, we need to let people do it the way they think is right, based on their own conclusions and based on what they see is right. And unfortunately, today in society, this is not the case, because when a woman isn't covering her head or covering her face, people are attacking her. You're going to hell, you're doing it wrong, you're not Muslim. This is just pure foolishness, because the book doesn't say it that way, and it's open to interpretation. There's a debate, there's disagreement. And so it's up to every woman to look at it and to determine for herself what it means to her. And that is the case with everything. It's very important that we look at everything we are taught and examine it for ourselves, to research and to look at things through logical eyes, so that we extract true meanings and not just, assumptions or the conditioning that we grew up in, or a certain environmental or cultural way. There's a big difference between doing something based on culture and doing something based on divine scripture. There's a huge difference. And so we can only determine that difference when we really consult with our own knowing and our own intelligence. And so we do what Immanuel Kant advised us to do, and that is dare to use your own intelligence. And so it's important for us to always question things and to find the truth that really makes sense to who we are and what we think is right? And again, God in the Holy Book says that He created men and women in different nations and in tribes so that they come to know one another and that they come and spread righteousness and do good deeds. So if a woman was covered from head to toe and hidden in a room, locked in a room somewhere, then it would be impossible for her to fulfill the instruction of God, which is to travel and meet different people of different nations and tribes and to spread good and to spread righteous acts. So it's very important for us to really examine what we are told and really check into it at a deeper level, because sometimes things are, I wouldn't say things are what we're told are lies, but I would say sometimes we're given wrong information or just misunderstanding. So it's important for us to consult with our own knowing so that we don't fall into the sheep herd where we just see someone doing something and we do that. It's important for us to always question things and to examine why things are the way they are. So this is the whole concept, or this is the whole issue with the woman covering. It's not very clear in the book. There's a difference of opinion, and it only refers to the body. The covering refers to the body and the decorative parts of the woman. But as for the head or for the face, it's open to interpretation. It's not very clear. And so for that reason, a woman should determine for herself what works best for her. And so we should let a woman do that and sit on the side and let her do that and not tell her how she should do it. Thank you so much for listening and have a wonderful day.